Before you put those cuffs on me, officer, verify the VIN. Maya Reynolds said it quietly, almost too quietly for the small crowd gathering beneath the cold white lights of the hotel parking lot. But Officer Daniel Mercer heard every word. He simply chose not to listen. Rain had been falling over Richmond for nearly an hour, leaving the pavement black and glossy beneath the flashing red and blue lights of his patrol car. Maya stood beside a charcoal gray SUV with her driver's license in Mercer's hand and the vehicle's key fob resting on the hood exactly where he had ordered her to place it. She was 38, dressed in a dark wool coat over a simple navy blouse, her expression composed despite the eyes gathering around her. 10 minutes earlier, she had walked out of the hotel carrying a leather briefcase, unlocked the SUV with the remote, and reached for the driver's door. That should have been ordinary. Instead, Mercer had crossed the parking lot and told her to step away from the vehicle. There had been a report of a stolen SUV several blocks away. Similar color, similar model. That was enough for Mercer to decide what he believed he was looking at. Maya had explained that the vehicle belonged to her. Mercer asked for identification. She provided it. He asked how she had obtained the vehicle. She answered that she had purchased it 2 years earlier. He asked where the registration was. She told him it was inside the glove compartment and offered to retrieve it if he permitted her to do so. Every answer came calmly, clearly, without argument. Yet somehow, each answer seemed to make Mercer more certain that she was hiding something. "Turn around," he said. Maya looked at him for a long second. "Did dispatch confirm the vehicle identification number?" Mercer tightened his jaw. Behind him, his younger partner, Officer Ethan Cole, glanced down at the mobile terminal inside the patrol car. He looked as though he wanted to say something, but Mercer spoke first. "I gave you an instruction." Maya's eyes moved briefly toward the small body camera attached to Mercer's uniform. A tiny indicator light showed that it was recording. Then she looked back at him. "I'm cooperating. I'm asking whether you verified the actual vehicle." Mercer interpreted the question as resistance. Maya interpreted his silence as something else entirely. Across the parking lot, a man beneath the hotel awning had raised his phone. A woman near the entrance stopped beside her suitcase. No one spoke. The rain filled the silence instead, tapping against the SUV's roof and running in thin streams across its windshield. Mercer had been an officer for 16 years. He trusted experience. He trusted instinct. And right now, instinct was telling him that Maya Reynolds did not belong behind the wheel of this vehicle. What he did not ask himself was why. "Hands behind your back," he said. Maya inhaled slowly. For the first time, something changed in her expression. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was attention. Precise, deliberate attention. She looked at Mercer's nameplate. Daniel Mercer. She held his name in her gaze for half a second longer than necessary, as though she had seen it somewhere before. Mercer didn't notice. Ethan did. "Dan," Ethan said carefully, "maybe we should wait for the full VIN return." Mercer barely turned. "I've got it handled." 5 words. Confident. Final. Maya said nothing more. She turned as instructed and allowed Mercer to place her under arrest. The metallic click was small, almost insignificant beneath the rain, but Maya closed her eyes for half a heartbeat when she heard it. Not because she believed her life was falling apart. Not because she wondered how she would prove who she was. She already knew exactly how this would end if the facts were allowed into the room. What concerned her was how easily they had been kept outside it. Mercer picked up her key fob and license, satisfied that the situation was under control. "You're being detained while we determine whether this vehicle was stolen," he said. Maya turned her head just enough to see the body camera again. "It's still recording?" she asked. Mercer gave her a puzzled look. Every second, Maya's face became unreadable. "Good." That single word made Ethan look at her again. Mercer ignored it. To him, she was simply another suspect trying to sound confident after being caught. He had no idea why she had come to Richmond. He had no idea what was inside the locked briefcase still sitting near the driver's seat. And he certainly had no idea that somewhere inside that briefcase was a file containing his own name. As Mercer guided Maya toward the patrol car, she looked once more at the SUV, then at the badge on his chest. He believed the badge had given him control of the night. Years later, he would remember the rain, the flashing lights, and especially the sound of those cuffs closing, because that was the moment Daniel Mercer thought he had made an arrest. In reality, he had just become evidence. 3 hours earlier, Richmond had looked almost peaceful. The rain had not started yet, and the late afternoon sky stretched pale gray above the downtown buildings as Maya Reynolds drove her charcoal gray SUV into the hotel parking lot. Traffic moved steadily along the avenue behind her, tires humming over dry pavement, while office workers crossed intersections with coffee cups in hand and commuters hurried toward home. Maya parked beneath a security light near the east entrance, turned off the engine, and remained still for several seconds. She had learned long ago that arriving somewhere was not the same as being ready to enter it. Her eyes moved across the mirrors, the hotel entrance, the neighboring vehicles, and finally the dashboard clock. 4:47 in the afternoon. She reached into her leather briefcase and removed a thin folder. There was nothing dramatic about it. No photograph on the cover. No warning label designed to attract attention. Just a case number printed neatly across the upper corner and 3 words beneath it: Traffic Enforcement Complaints. Maya opened the folder and scanned a page filled with dates, incident numbers, and officer assignments. Some entries had been highlighted. Others carried handwritten notes in the margin. She stopped on one line, read it twice, then closed the folder when her phone began to ring. The caller identification showed Director Hayes. Maya answered. Reynolds. The voice on the other end was measured. You made it. About 10 minutes ago. Any contact with the department? Maya looked through the windshield toward the city beyond the parking lot. Not yet. A pause followed. Keep it that way until tomorrow. We need the records before anyone knows what we are comparing them against. Maya glanced toward the closed folder. Agreed. I want to see the pattern before they know we are here. Call me if anything changes. I will. The call ended. Maya placed the phone inside her briefcase, but she did not immediately leave the vehicle. For 6 weeks, reports from Richmond had crossed her desk one by one. Individually, each could be explained. A traffic stop that lasted too long. A search based on an unclear description. A complaint dismissed because a camera supposedly failed to capture the relevant minutes. Paperwork that arrived incomplete. Dates that did not quite match. Nothing alone proved misconduct. Together, however, the incidents formed something Maya had spent her career learning to recognize: repetition. Patterns rarely announced themselves. They hid inside routine. That was why she was here. Not to accuse anyone. Not yet. Her job was to separate suspicion from fact, assumption from evidence, and isolated mistakes from behavior that repeated because nobody had challenged it. Maya stepped out of the SUV, locked it, and entered the hotel carrying only the briefcase. At the front desk, she checked in under her own name. No special treatment. No announcement. No one from the local police department knew that she had arrived. Upstairs, her room overlooked several blocks of downtown Richmond. She placed the briefcase on the desk, opened her laptop, and reviewed the records again. One document contained 47 complaints collected over several years. Another showed disciplinary outcomes. A third listed officers connected to more than one disputed stop. Maya studied the information without rushing. She knew statistics could suggest a story, but evidence had to prove it. Outside, the sky darkened. The first drops of rain touched the window. By 7:30, Maya had filled several pages of notes. She closed the laptop, slipped one folder back into the briefcase, and decided to drive across town for dinner before continuing her work. In the elevator, she stood beside a family discussing restaurant choices and a businessman complaining quietly into his phone. Nobody looked twice at her. That suited Maya perfectly. She had built much of her career around noticing what other people overlooked, and she preferred entering an investigation before anyone had time to perform for her. The lobby doors opened. Rain now swept across the parking lot beneath the lights. Maya tightened her coat and walked toward her SUV. 50 yards away, a police cruiser turned slowly into the lot. She noticed it, then continued walking. There was no reason not to. She reached her vehicle, pressed the remote, and saw the lights flash. Behind her, the cruiser stopped. A door opened. Maya heard footsteps approaching through the rain. She turned. The officer coming toward her was tall, white, middle-aged, and already watching her with the fixed concentration of someone who believed he understood the situation before asking his first question. Maya's eyes dropped briefly to the nameplate on his uniform, Daniel Mercer. Something in her expression changed, but only for an instant. She knew that name. She simply had not expected the name to find her first. Mercer stopped about 8 feet from Maya and raised one hand, not as a greeting, but as a command. Step away from the vehicle. Maya looked at him, then at the patrol car behind him. Rain tapped against the shoulders of her coat. Is there a problem, officer? I said step away from the vehicle. She moved 2 steps back without argument. Mercer approached the charcoal gray SUV and studied it as though the answer he wanted might be written across the windshield. Is this your vehicle? Yes. How long have you owned it? 2 years. Mercer looked at her again. His eyes traveled from her face to the leather briefcase resting near the driver's seat, then back to the SUV. Identification. Maya reached slowly toward her coat pocket. My driver's license is inside my wallet. Take it out. She handed him the license. Mercer read the name. Maya Denise Reynolds. Richmond address temporarily replaced by a permanent Maryland address. He compared the photograph with her face. Maryland license. I live in Maryland. What are you doing in Richmond? Working. What kind of work? Maya paused. It was a simple question, but she understood that the answer could change everything too early. Investigative consulting. Mercer gave a faint, skeptical smile. For who? Is my employer relevant to the vehicle? His expression hardened. I asked the questions. Maya said nothing. A second patrol car entered the lot and stopped several spaces away. Officer Ethan Cole stepped out, pulled on a rain jacket, and approached. He appeared younger than Mercer by at least 15 years. What do we have? He asked. Possible stolen vehicle, Mercer replied. Ethan looked at the SUV. From the report on Franklin? Same general description. Ethan glanced toward the rear plate. The stolen vehicle was dark gray? That is what dispatch said. Maya listened carefully. General description. Dark gray. Neither phrase established that this was the vehicle they were looking for. Mercer returned his attention to her. Registration? Inside the glove compartment. Do not move. I was not planning to. Ethan glanced at Maya, then toward the SUV. We can run the plate. Mercer handed him the license. Do it. Ethan returned to the patrol car. Mercer remained beside Maya. The silence stretched between them. Cars passed on the street beyond the hotel, their headlights sliding across the wet pavement. You said you bought this 2 years ago, Mercer said. Correct. Cash. Maya looked at him. Why does that matter? Just answer. No. Financing. Through what bank? Maya's expression shifted slightly. Officer, you have my license, the license plate, and access to the vehicle identification number. Any one of those can help establish ownership. My financing arrangement cannot. Mercer stared at her. You seem pretty familiar with procedure. I am familiar with evidence. For the first time, Mercer hesitated. Only a second. Then the moment disappeared. He looked through the passenger window and noticed the leather briefcase. What is in the bag? Work documents. Anything illegal? No. Mind if I look? I do not consent to a search. Mercer gave a short breath that almost sounded like amusement. That usually means somebody has something to hide. Maya met his eyes. Or it means they understand the question you just asked. 50 feet away, Ethan was leaning toward the computer screen inside the cruiser. Maya could see him typing. Mercer could have waited. He could have let the records answer what assumptions could not. Instead, he continued. People steal vehicles with keys every day. I know. Registration can be forged. I know. Plates can be switched. I know. Maya tilted her head slightly. What evidence would actually change your mind? The question landed differently from everything she had said before. Mercer did not answer. Maya watched him carefully. She had interviewed hundreds of people during her career. She knew the difference between someone testing a theory and someone defending one. A good investigator wanted contradictory evidence because it prevented a bad conclusion. A careless investigator treated contradiction as an obstacle. Ethan finally stepped away from the cruiser. Daniel. Mercer turned. The plate comes back to Reynolds. Maya remained silent. Mercer looked at her license, then at the SUV. For one brief moment, the entire encounter could have ended there. First name? Mercer asked. Ethan checked the screen. Maya. Rain ran from the edge of Mercer's cap. His expression did not soften. That does not prove she is the legal owner standing here tonight. Check the vehicle identification number against the theft report. Ethan hesitated. The plate already matches her license. Check the vehicle identification number. Ethan returned to the computer. Maya studied Mercer with a calm that now seemed to unsettle him. Every fact had moved in one direction, yet Mercer kept walking the other way. Then the radio inside the patrol car crackled. Ethan leaned closer to listen. A partial vehicle description came through, followed by a sequence of numbers. Mercer heard enough to straighten. He looked at Maya, as if the night had finally given him what he wanted. Maya looked past him toward the computer. She knew partial information could be more dangerous than no information at all, especially in the hands of someone already certain. Mercer stepped toward her. "Looks like we may have a match." Maya did not look surprised. "A match to what?" she asked. And in that moment, the difference between them became painfully clear. Maya was still asking what the evidence proved. Mercer had already decided what he wanted it to mean. "A match to what?" Maya asked again. Mercer glanced toward Ethan, but the younger officer was still studying the information on the patrol computer. "The vehicle description," Mercer said. "That is not what I asked." His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me. You said you may have a match. I am asking what specifically matches. The make? The model? The color? The license plate? The vehicle identification number?" Her voice remained controlled, almost clinical, and that seemed to irritate him more than anger would have. Mercer stepped closer to the SUV and pointed toward it. "A vehicle matching this description was reported stolen tonight. Then verify this vehicle against the report." "We are doing that." "No," Maya said. "Officer Cole is doing that." "You are reaching a conclusion before he finishes." Ethan looked up from the computer. The rain had grown steadier, creating a soft roar against the roof of the cruiser. Mercer turned toward him. "What do you have?" Ethan hesitated. "The report is for a charcoal gray sport utility vehicle, same manufacturer, same general model line." Mercer looked back at Maya with quiet satisfaction. "There you go." Ethan did not move. "But the plate is different." Mercer frowned. "Plates get switched, and the model year appears different. Could have been entered wrong." Maya watched the exchange without interrupting. There it was again. Every fact that supported Mercer's suspicion counted immediately. Every fact that challenged it became an error, an excuse, or another reason to investigate her. Mercer faced Maya. "Where were you an hour ago?" "In my hotel room." "Anyone confirm that?" "The hotel has cameras." Convenient answer. It is a verifiable answer. Mercer looked toward the hotel entrance. Several people were now watching from beneath the awning. One man still held his phone upright. Maya could feel the humiliation of the moment, but she refused to let it control her. She had spent years interviewing frightened witnesses, skeptical officials, and people who believed authority meant never admitting uncertainty. She knew that once emotion took command, facts became harder to hear. "Officer Mercer," she said, "my name matches the registration returned from the plate. My driver's license matches my identity. I unlocked the vehicle with the key in my possession. The reported stolen vehicle has a different plate and possibly a different model year. What evidence would you need before you accept that this may not be the vehicle?" Mercer stared at her. "You have an answer for everything. That is because you keep asking questions with factual answers." Ethan lowered his gaze, hiding a reaction. Mercer noticed. "Run the full vehicle identification number." "I am trying," Ethan said. "Dispatch is backed up." The initial alert only gave a partial sequence. Mercer turned toward Maya. "Until we clear this up, you are being detained." "On what specific basis?" "Possible possession of a stolen vehicle." Maya exhaled slowly. "Then please state for your camera that the license plate currently returns to me and that the full vehicle identification number has not yet been confirmed as matching the stolen vehicle." Silence. Mercer glanced at the body camera mounted on his uniform. For the first time that evening, the tiny recording light seemed to matter to him. "You do not tell me how to do my job. I did not tell you how to do it. I asked you to accurately state what you know." Ethan stepped forward. "Daniel, we could wait 5 minutes for dispatch." Mercer shook his head. "We are not standing in the rain debating procedure all night." He looked at Maya. "Turn around." Maya remained still for one heartbeat. "Before you make that decision, verify the full number." "Turn around. The evidence is available." Last warning. Maya looked toward Ethan. He appeared uncomfortable now, caught between rank, habit, and what the computer was telling him. Then she looked back at Mercer. There was no fear in her expression, only disappointment. "All right," she said. She turned calmly and placed her hands behind her back. Mercer secured the handcuffs and reached for the key fob on the hood. The man beneath the awning continued recording. Ethan returned to the cruiser, clearly unwilling to abandon the search. Maya watched the body camera indicator once more. "Is it recording?" she asked. "Yes," Mercer answered. "Good." Mercer opened the rear door of the patrol car. You can explain everything downtown. Maya paused before getting inside. That is exactly what I intend to do. 10 seconds later, Ethan called from the cruiser. Daniel, wait. Mercer stopped. Ethan was staring at the screen. I got another return. For a fraction of a second, Maya thought the mistake was finally about to end. Then Ethan's radio crackled with an automated update connected to the earlier theft report. A partial number appeared on the screen. Several digits overlapped with the number visible through Maya's windshield. Mercer saw them and smiled. That is enough for me. Ethan looked uncertain. It is only a partial sequence. But Mercer had already made his choice. The patrol car door closed, separating Maya from the ring. Through the window, she watched Mercer walk toward the driver's seat with the confidence of a man who believed uncertainty had finally disappeared. Maya knew better. Partial evidence did not become complete evidence simply because someone wanted it to. And as the cruiser pulled away from the hotel, she looked at Mercer's name reflected backward in the glass partition and remembered exactly where she had seen it before. The ride downtown lasted less than 12 minutes, but Mercer spent most of it behaving like the case had already been solved. Maya sat quietly in the rear seat while Richmond passed beyond the rain-streaked window, storefront lights stretching into blurred ribbons across the glass. Ethan followed in the second cruiser, still working through the vehicle information. Mercer occasionally glanced at Maya through the mirror. You got quiet, he said. Maya lifted her eyes. I have already answered your questions. Most people would be trying pretty hard to explain themselves right now. I did explain myself. Mercer gave a faint smile. We will see. Maya looked toward the body camera on his uniform. Your camera has been running the entire time? Every second. She nodded once. Good. The answer seemed to bother him. Why do you keep asking about the camera? Because records matter. Mercer waited for more, but Maya gave him nothing. What he could not understand was that she was no longer trying to persuade him. That opportunity had existed in the parking lot, when her license matched the registration and the full vehicle identification number remained unverified. Mercer had chosen certainty over patience. Now Maya was simply observing what happened next. At the precinct, fluorescent lights replaced the blue and red reflections of the street. Mercer escorted her through the booking area while two officers looked up from their desks. He placed her key fob, driver's license, and personal belongings on the counter. Possible stolen vehicle, he told the booking officer. Driver claims ownership. Claims. Maya noticed the word immediately. The booking officer entered her information. Maya Denise Reynolds? Yes. Date of birth. Maya answered. Mercer stood nearby, arms folded, watching the process with the satisfaction of someone waiting for paperwork to confirm his judgment. Then Ethan entered carrying a printed report. His expression was different now. Daniel, we need to talk. Mercer barely looked at him. What? The partial number from the alert was not a confirmed vehicle identification number match. We know that. No. I mean the numbers we heard were from the manufacturer's sequence. Thousands of vehicles can share part of it. Mercer frowned. The description still matches. Ethan placed the report on the counter. The stolen vehicle is a 2021 model. Hers is a 2023. Maya said nothing. Mercer picked up the paper. Could be an error in the report. The license plate is different. We already knew that. And her plate returns to her, which does not automatically clear the vehicle. Every fact that should have weakened the suspicion somehow became another reason for Mercer to protect it. Maya watched him carefully. This was the pattern investigators feared most because it rarely announced itself as dishonesty. Sometimes it looked like confidence. Sometimes experience. Sometimes a person becoming so invested in being right that evidence stopped functioning as evidence. The booking officer looked between them. Do we have a confirmed stolen return or not? Mercer answered first. We have enough to hold her while we verify. Ethan did not look convinced. Maya finally spoke. Officer Cole, have you run the complete vehicle identification number directly through the state database? Ethan turned toward her. Dispatch is doing it now. Thank you. Mercer looked at Maya. You really like telling officers what to check. No. I like knowing what has actually been checked. Before Mercer could respond, Ethan's radio sounded. He stepped several feet away and listened. His shoulders slowly lowered. Copy that. Confirm the registered owner. He listened again. Understood. The room seemed quieter when he returned. The full number came back. Mercer stared at him. Ethan placed the radio on his belt. The vehicle is registered to Maya Denise Reynolds. No stolen report. No altered registration flag. Nothing. The booking officer stopped typing. Mercer looked down at Maya's driver's license, then at the report, as though staring long enough might produce a different answer. Run it again. Ethan blinked. Daniel, run it again. It is her vehicle. Mercer lowered his voice, then explained the alert. Different vehicle. Same manufacturer. Similar model. Different year, different plate, different full number. Maya watched Mercer absorb the information. This should have been the moment the situation ended. Instead, he turned toward the leather briefcase that another officer had brought inside with her belongings. What about that? Maya's gaze followed his. What about it? You refuse consent to search it. That is correct. Why? Because declining a voluntary search is not evidence of a crime. Mercer stared at her, and for the first time his confidence seemed less solid. Maya leaned back slightly. You have confirmed that the vehicle belongs to me. Am I free to leave? No one answered immediately. Then a telephone rang at the desk. The booking officer picked it up, listened, and looked directly at Maya. There is a call for someone named Reynolds. Mercer frowned. From who? The officer covered the receiver. A Director Hayes. Maya did not reach for the telephone. She looked instead at Mercer, then at the camera on his uniform. Before anyone turns that recording off, she said quietly, make sure it is preserved. Mercer stared at her. Ethan stared at Mercer. And suddenly the question in the room was no longer whether Maya Reynolds had stolen a vehicle. It was why a woman who had just been cleared was speaking as though everything that had happened needed to become evidence. The telephone remained in the booking officer's hand as the room settled into an uneasy silence. Mercer looked from the receiver to Maya. Who is Director Hayes? Maya kept her eyes on him. Someone expecting an update from me. About what? My work. Mercer gave a humorless smile. Investigative consulting? That is what I told you. Ethan stepped closer to the counter. Daniel, the vehicle is clean. We should release her belongings and document the correction. Mercer ignored him. What exactly are you investigating? Maya looked toward the leather briefcase. That question has nothing to do with the vehicle you believed was stolen. Maybe it does now. No, Maya replied. The vehicle was never stolen. That fact does not change because you want another reason to keep asking questions. The booking officer slowly lowered the telephone. Ethan looked uncomfortable. Mercer looked irritated. Maya looked patient. And patience, in that moment, carried more weight than authority. Take the call, Mercer said. Maya shook her head. Not yet. Why not? Because I want the record preserved first. Mercer glanced again at his body camera. You keep talking about records. Records are useful when memories become convenient. Ethan's eyes moved toward her. Something about the sentence changed his expression. Maya noticed. She had noticed almost everything since Mercer approached her in the parking lot. His refusal to wait for the complete vehicle identification number. The way he dismissed information that contradicted his assumption. The language he used in booking. The insistence on finding another justification after the original suspicion collapsed. None of it proved what she had traveled to Richmond to investigate. But none of it was meaningless either. Mercer turned to Ethan. Put the briefcase in property. She is not under arrest anymore, Ethan said. Mercer stiffened. I did not say she was released. For what offense are we holding her? The question hung there. Mercer opened his mouth, then stopped. Maya watched the younger officer carefully. Ethan had spent most of the evening following Mercer's lead, but evidence had finally forced him to choose between loyalty to a colleague and loyalty to what the records actually showed. Get Captain Bennett, Ethan said to the booking officer. Mercer turned sharply. I am handling this. Then tell me the legal basis for keeping her here. Silence again. Maya lowered her gaze toward the duty roster clipped beside the booking station. Rows of names ran down the page. She scanned them casually until one stopped her. Mercer, Daniel R., Patrol Division. Beside his name was an assignment number. Maya knew that number too. 6 weeks of files returned to her in fragments. Complaint 18. A late-night traffic stop that lasted 43 minutes without a citation. Complaint 27. A vehicle search later described as voluntary, although the driver disputed giving consent. Complaint 41. A stop based on a description so broad that 2 reviewers had questioned it before the complaint disappeared into administrative closure. Daniel Mercer had appeared more than once. Not enough to convict him of anything. More than enough to require questions. Maya lifted her eyes. The man standing across from her was no longer simply the officer who had detained her. He was a name that had existed in ink before it existed in front of her. Mercer noticed her looking at the roster and stepped slightly into her line of sight. "What are you looking at?" "Nothing confidential. You seem very interested in this department." Maya met his stare. "I am interested in how decisions get made." "What is that supposed to mean?" "Exactly what I said." Footsteps sounded in the hallway. The booking officer looked toward the door. "Captain Bennett is coming." Mercer exhaled and rubbed his forehead. "This has gotten ridiculous. We had a reported stolen vehicle. She matched the situation. We investigated. The information changed." Maya's expression remained still. "The information did not change." Mercer looked at her. "What?" "My license matched my registration in the parking lot. The stolen vehicle had a different plate. Officer Cole told you the model year appeared different. The complete vehicle identification number had not been verified. Those facts were available before you brought me here." Ethan said nothing. He did not need to. Mercer looked toward him, perhaps expecting support, but Ethan's attention had shifted to the floor. Maya continued, quieter now. "The information did not change, Officer Mercer. Your willingness to accept it did." The words landed without anger. That made them harder to dismiss. Then the hallway door opened. Captain Laura Bennett entered quickly, carrying a folder in one hand. She was in her early 50s, silver beginning to show at her temples. Her expression focused until she saw Maya standing beside the booking counter. She stopped. Her face lost its color. Her eyes moved to the property bag, the leather briefcase, then to Mercer. "What happened here?" Mercer straightened. "Captain, we had a suspected stolen vehicle. It turned out to be a database confusion." Bennett barely seemed to hear him. She looked directly at Maya. "Ms. Reynolds." Maya nodded once. Bennett closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, the room felt different. "Where are her handcuffs?" she asked. The booking officer pointed toward the counter. Bennett looked at Mercer again, and this time there was something in her expression he could not read. "Tell me," she said slowly, "that you did not bring Maya Reynolds into this station as a car theft suspect." Mercer frowned. "You know her?" Bennett did not answer immediately. Maya watched the realization approaching him 1 second at a time. Then Bennett placed the folder on the counter. On its cover were the same 3 words Maya had been reading hours earlier. "Traffic enforcement complaints." Mercer stared at them. For the first time that night, he stopped looking certain. Mercer stared at the folder as if the 3 words on its cover had changed the temperature of the room. "Traffic enforcement complaints." He looked at Captain Bennett, then at Maya, searching their faces for an explanation that would return the night to something he understood. "Captain, who exactly is she?" Bennett held his gaze for a moment. "Someone you should have listened to before you decided you already knew the answer." Mercer shook his head. "I followed a vehicle theft alert." "Then why is the registered owner standing inside my booking area?" Bennett asked. "There was a partial match." "A partial match that Officer Cole says did not identify her vehicle." Mercer glanced toward Ethan. "We did not know that at first." Ethan finally spoke. "We knew the plate returned to her before we left the hotel." Mercer turned toward him. "And I told you plates can be switched." Bennett raised one hand. "Enough." The room went silent. She looked at Maya. "Ms. Reynolds, I apologize. You should not have been brought here." Maya did not smile. "I appreciate you saying that, Captain." Bennett nodded toward the property counter. "Return everything to her." The booking officer immediately gathered Maya's driver's license, phone, keys, and personal items. Mercer watched the leather briefcase remain on the counter. His attention returned to it again, as though whatever it contained might explain why everyone except him suddenly seemed to understand what was happening. "Captain," he said carefully, "you still have not answered my question." Bennett looked at Maya before responding. Maya gave a small nod. Bennett turned back to Mercer. "Maya Reynolds is the lead investigator assigned by the State Bureau of Investigation Public Integrity Unit to conduct an independent review involving this department." Nothing moved. Even the booking officer stopped arranging the property bag. Mercer blinked. "Public integrity?" "Yes." She said she was a consultant. Maya answered before Bennett could. "I said I was doing investigative consulting. You asked what kind of work I was doing. You never established a lawful reason that required me to disclose the details of a confidential review." Mercer looked at her differently now. The woman he had spent the evening treating as someone whose answers required suspicion was suddenly standing before him with authority he had never considered possible. But Maya did not raise her voice. She did not reach for a badge dramatically. She simply opened her wallet after the booking officer returned it and removed a credential card. She placed it face up on the counter. Her photograph appeared beside her full name and title. Lead Investigator, Public Integrity Unit. Mercer read it twice. Ethan looked from the credential to Maya. That is why you knew the procedure. Maya turned toward him. Procedure is supposed to protect everyone, Officer Cole. It should not matter whether the person being stopped understands it. Ethan absorbed that quietly. Mercer did not. So what was this? He asked. Some kind of test? Maya's expression hardened for the first time. No. You came here investigating officers, then happened to be outside with a vehicle matching a theft report? I came here to review records tomorrow morning. I was going to dinner. And you expect me to believe this was coincidence? Maya looked directly at him. Officer Mercer, that question tells me more than you realize. Bennett stepped between the conversation before it could sharpen. Daniel, stop talking. Mercer ignored the warning. If she is investigating this department, then everything I did tonight is going to be used against me. Everything you did tonight, Maya said, was recorded by your own camera. What happens next depends on what that recording shows. Mercer looked down at the device on his uniform. Hours earlier, he had treated it as background equipment. Now it seemed impossibly visible. Bennett turned to the booking officer. Secure the body camera footage immediately. Preserve dispatch audio, computer queries, booking records, and the hotel call log. Nothing gets deleted or overwritten. Mercer stared at her. You are opening an investigation over a mistaken vehicle stop. Bennett's voice remained level. I am preserving evidence. There is a difference. Maya picked up her keys, but left the briefcase where it was. Captain Bennett, I also want Officer Cole's vehicle query history preserved. Ethan looked surprised. Mine? Yes. It establishes when the contradictory information became available. Ethan nodded slowly. Understood. Mercer gave a frustrated breath. This is unbelievable. Maya looked at him. What part? You know what part? No, Officer Mercer. I want you to say it. He remained silent. Maya stepped closer to the counter, not threatening, not triumphant, simply certain. Is it unbelievable that the woman you detained owns the vehicle? Is it unbelievable that the evidence contradicted your assumption? Or is it unbelievable that the person you assumed had no authority to question your decisions actually has a professional responsibility to examine them? Mercer had no answer. The rain continued against the precinct windows, softer now than before. Bennett looked toward the folder she had brought into the room. Mercer followed her gaze. What is in that file? He asked. Maya rested one hand beside the briefcase. That is the question you should be worried about. Mercer swallowed. Am I part of this review? Maya did not answer immediately. She unlocked the briefcase, removed a second folder, and placed it beside Bennett's. Mercer saw several complaint numbers printed across the first page. Then he saw a familiar name. His own. Maya looked up. Tonight is not why I came to Richmond, Officer Mercer. The last trace of certainty disappeared from his face. Then why did you come? Maya held his gaze. You were one of the reasons. For several seconds, Daniel Mercer said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the page inside Maya's folder, where his name appeared beside 3 complaint numbers he had not expected to see again. Complaint 18. Complaint 27. Complaint 41. They looked small on paper, almost harmless, but Mercer knew the incidents behind them. Those were closed, he said finally. Maya studied him. They were. Then why are they in your file? Because closed does not always mean resolved. Captain Bennett shifted beside the counter, her expression tightening. Mercer looked toward her. You knew about this review? Bennett answered carefully. I knew an outside investigator was coming. I was not given the full scope. And nobody thought I should know? That would defeat the purpose of an independent review. Mercer turned back to Maya. So you already decided I did something wrong? No. Her answer came immediately. If I had already decided, I would not need an investigation. She opened the folder and placed 3 documents on the counter. What I had were questions. She touched the first page. A driver stopped shortly after midnight. No citation issued. 43 minutes before release. The second, a vehicle search documented as consensual. The driver disputed giving consent. The third, a stop based on a description that 2 supervisors later described as unusually broad. Mercer shook his head. You are reading paperwork without context. That is exactly why I came here. Maya's voice stayed calm. To find the context. Ethan stood several feet away, listening. Mercer pointed toward the folder. Complaints do not prove misconduct. Correct. People complain when they do not like being stopped. Sometimes, officers make judgment calls. Every day, Mercer seemed briefly confused by her willingness to agree. He had expected an accusation. Maya was giving him something more difficult to fight, procedure. Then what exactly is your point? He asked. Maya closed the folder. My point is that tonight gave me something those files could not. Mercer stared at her. What? A direct observation. The room became still. Maya continued. I watched you receive information that supported your suspicion, and I watched you accept it immediately. I watched Officer Cole provide information that contradicted your suspicion, and I watched you search for reasons to dismiss it. My registration matched my identity. You continued. The reported plate was different. You continued. The model year was different. You continued. The complete vehicle identification number had not been confirmed. You arrested me anyway. Mercer looked toward Ethan. You were there. Tell her we had reasonable concerns. Ethan hesitated. That hesitation said more than an immediate answer could have. We had a reason to check the vehicle, he said slowly. I do not think we had enough to take her downtown after the registration came back. Mercer stared at him. Seriously? Ethan swallowed. You asked what I think. Bennett stepped forward. This conversation ends here. Daniel, you are relieved from patrol duty pending administrative review. Mercer's face changed. Captain, turn in your department vehicle keys and equipment before you leave. Over one mistake. Maya spoke before Bennett could answer. That is what the investigation will determine. Mercer looked at her. You are enjoying this. Maya's expression did not change. No. You expect me to believe that? I expect nothing from you tonight. She paused. But I want you to understand something. If I wanted revenge, your embarrassment would be enough. I am interested in whether other people experienced the same decision-making when there was no investigator standing in front of you. That silenced him. Bennett instructed the booking officer to begin preserving the records. Ethan returned to his computer and printed the timeline of database queries. Dispatch audio was flagged for retention. The body camera recording was secured before the system could cycle it into routine storage. One by one, the ordinary pieces of the evening became evidence. Timestamps, radio traffic, search returns, spoken words, decisions. Maya watched the process without satisfaction. Her thoughts were already moving beyond herself. 47 complaints had brought her to Richmond. 3 had carried Mercer's name. Now there was another incident, except this time the person stopped knew exactly which questions to ask, and every critical minute had been recorded. Mercer looked toward the body camera one final time before removing it according to Bennett's instruction. What happens now? He asked. Maya picked up her briefcase. Now we do what should have been done from the beginning. Mercer waited. We check everything before deciding what it means. The next morning, investigators began comparing his previous reports with dispatch records and preserved camera footage. By afternoon, inconsistencies appeared in more than one case. By the end of the week, former complainants were being contacted again. And for the first time, Daniel Mercer understood that the most dangerous thing in Maya Reynolds' briefcase had never been her title, her credentials, or her authority. It was the history everyone assumed would stay closed. 6 weeks later, the rain was gone, but Maya Reynolds remembered it clearly when she entered the municipal hearing room in downtown Richmond. Morning sunlight crossed the polished floor in long golden rectangles, and every seat behind the public railing was occupied. Some faces belonged to reporters. Others belonged to residents whose names Maya had first encountered as complaint numbers. Captain Laura Bennett sat near the front beside representatives from the department. Ethan Cole waited several chairs away, holding a folder containing the statement he had voluntarily submitted. Daniel Mercer sat alone at the opposite table. He wore a dark suit instead of a uniform. For 16 years, the badge had been the first thing many people noticed about him. Today, there was no badge. The independent review had examined 47 complaints, hundreds of pages of reports, dispatch recordings, vehicle searches, and preserved camera footage. Not every complaint had been substantiated. Maya had insisted on that distinction. Justice could not mean replacing one assumption with another. Evidence had to lead, even when the evidence complicated the story. But several cases revealed the same troubling pattern she had witnessed personally. Suspicion formed quickly, contradictory information received less weight, and explanations were sometimes written afterward as though uncertainty had never existed. Mercer had not created every failure uncovered by the review. That mattered too. Supervisors had approved incomplete reports. Complaints had been closed without meaningful follow-up. Warning signs had been separated into individual files until nobody could see what they formed together. The hearing officer asked Maya to summarize her findings. She stood, adjusted the microphone, and looked across the room. "This review began before my encounter with Officer Mercer," she said. "That encounter did not create the concerns examined here. It demonstrated why those concerns required examination." Mercer looked down. Maya continued without anger. She described the sequence from the hotel parking lot. Her identification, the registration return, the different license plate, the different model year, the incomplete vehicle identification number, and the decision to continue despite those contradictions. Then she described what happened afterward. Previous complainants had been interviewed again. Archived recordings had been compared with written reports. Supervisory procedures had been reviewed. Training standards had been questioned. The investigation became larger than one officer because accountability, Maya believed, was meaningless if a system punished one person while preserving every condition that allowed the same mistake to happen again. Ethan was called next. His testimony was simple. He admitted that he had recognized the uncertainty in the parking lot, but had waited too long to challenge Mercer's decision. "I thought experience meant he probably saw something I did not," Ethan said. "Now I understand that if the evidence is incomplete, silence does not make it complete." Captain Bennett testified after him. She acknowledged that earlier complaints should have been compared rather than reviewed in isolation. New safeguards had already been introduced: stronger supervisory review, clearer documentation requirements, additional training on evidence-based stops, and automatic review when repeated complaints involved similar conduct. Mercer listened to all of it. When his opportunity to speak arrived, he stood slowly. For the first time since Maya had met him, certainty was absent from his voice. "I believed I was doing my job," he said. "I kept looking for reasons my first conclusion could still be right instead of asking whether it was wrong." He paused. That affected people. Maya watched him carefully. An admission could not erase consequences, but consequences did not require humiliation to be meaningful. The hearing ultimately sustained multiple findings related to procedure and judgment. Mercer lost his patrol position and faced formal disciplinary action under department rules. Other findings led to broader departmental reforms. Several previously closed complaints were reopened for independent review. Outside the hearing room, reporters gathered around Maya, asking whether she felt vindicated. She considered the word before answering. "This was never about proving that I was important enough to deserve fair treatment," she said. "That would miss the entire point. Nobody should need a title, a credential, or powerful connections before the facts matter." Later, Maya walked alone toward the parking garage. Her charcoal gray SUV waited exactly where she had left it. She unlocked the door and paused before getting inside. 6 weeks earlier, another parking lot had become the beginning of something neither she nor Mercer had expected. He had looked at a black woman beside an expensive vehicle and allowed suspicion to outrun evidence. The irony was not that she turned out to be powerful. The deeper truth was that her power should never have been necessary. Maya started the engine and looked once at the city reflected in the rearview mirror. A badge could grant authority. It could never grant permission to decide whose dignity mattered. Daniel Mercer had seen a suspect before he saw a person. Maya Reynolds had seen the evidence, followed it wherever it led, and made sure the system finally learned to do the same.